Morning, Paul.
Morning.
Team news first of all. Any further knocks or any more cases from last week?
No, just a couple of lads with things to check on this morning. John McAtee, Harry Clifton in particular. Just need to check on those. Hopefully it's nothing that's going to keep them out of the game, so I'm expecting them to travel with us. But they're just the two that we need to check on. Everything else was as we were at the weekend.
With John, is that the same sort of problem that we had before?
No, I think probably just more a bit of fatigue. We think, we always want the players to report anything just to try and make sure. And I'm hoping it's just one of those where he's just covering himself more than anything. That is in case he did feel anything today. But the report I got back yesterday was that he should be okay.
You thought after the game on Saturday that the players that obviously were out due to COVID would miss the next two. Have you had any more clarity on that? Is that
yeah, I think that's still pretty much where we're at. So we no surprise realistically. And as I said before, we crack on with things.
Yeah, and 48 hours after the game, have you had a chance to reflect on Saturday? You said you'd have a look back and see which half you thought was better.
Yeah, I haven't watched it like in its entirety, but seen some things, and like I say, you're constantly thinking about how could we have been better, and but have to be accepting of sometimes that's just the way it is. And also was more keen to watch Wealdstone, their game at the weekend, and I think they certainly had a couple of lads went off injured, so it'll be interesting to see whether they are injuries that keep them out, because I think they've been two players that have played quite regular for them. So yeah, it wasn't. It's not certainly a day to switch off. You're just looking at things on both sides to get ready for the next game.
And what have you made of Wheelstone this season? Obviously 2 wins in 12, so not the best start for them.
No, I think that's a little bit misleading overall in terms of how they performed at times. Just saying before, they play good football, and that was something that I'll hold my hand up to. When I started looking into as the game was getting closer, you start looking at their games. It was a nice surprise how they played, and how they want to play. Clearly want to get the ball out of the back and try and build play and play themselves up the pitch. So that's something to guard against. And obviously there's also some things you look at and hope that you can exploit in the game. So yeah, I think they've had a couple of good results, a couple that they won't have been pleased with, but overall I think they've been relatively good. So it's not the team that we've come up against before when I was here. New to sort of the National League. So for me, it's another ground to go to, but ultimately the biggest thing is just trying to keep his run going.
How different is it for you when you've got three games in the space of 7 days in terms of managing your squad?
The training obviously changes, and in terms of getting preparation, it is a little bit different. It's always, I think if you've got a free week, depending on the opposition and how much you feel you need to work on, if they're doing something different or you've got a particular tactic that might be slightly different than we would normally adopt, you might start dripping that in sort of on Tuesday and then revisit that Thursday, whereas you just don't have that time. The time isn't there with the players. We'll still get the pre-match video of the analysis of how we think, what their strengths are, what maybe some of the weaknesses are, the set plays, etc. But it is a quick turnaround, and especially when it's like today, when we've got a long travel ahead, and tomorrow you're not going to do too much realistically on the day of the game. You do not under prepared, but you feel like you could perhaps do a little bit more towards it. But that's just schedules and the way that it is.
How difficult is it to change a winning team when you've got, for example, 3 games Sundays? Because you'll have players that will be chomping at the bit that want to play, but obviously that fatigue naturally will come in more in a 3 game when you've got 3 games than it would week to week when you've got a free week.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really had an issue with that in terms of I think you've got to be sort of strong-minded as a manager, and you make your decisions and stick with them. And it's very easy to get caught up in that the cliche if you don't change your winning side. I've said before, I think that's a bit of a myth for me. You only hear them things really when you play the game and you made a change and you get beat. When you make changes and you win, people don't start shouting out, "Oh, he's changed it and that was the right thing to do." So yeah, you just pick the team that you think's right. You just consider each individual. It might be something that we see in the stats that might influence a decision, but the biggest thing is what you see with your eyes, and sometimes even what you feel in your gut. I'm a big believer in that. You get those feelings over time for a reason, and sometimes you act on it.
Yeah, Riley Tyler's been getting really good reviews, in particular after Saturday's game. How impressed have you been with him since he's come to the club, and also sort of the partnership he's built with Luke Waterfall at centre back?
Yeah, I mean, at the start of the game, I think he had a few testing moments, and perhaps positionally could have picked up better positions to start with to help deal with a couple of situations. But overall, he's been superb for us. A young lad. Just because he's coming from my age doesn't always, I think we've seen that over the years, and I'm sure at this football club, at others, there's no guarantee just because they've come in from a good club that they're going to be quite ready or can take to it. Sometimes styles, and I think that was, not a concern because I obviously brought him in, but that was one of the things that would be interesting to see. Can he get adapt to National League football, because it's going to be different than the Championship or 23s football that he's been involved in, and he's done extremely well. I think he's got better generally with each game, and it's I'm sure he says he's loving it, and I think it's one of those loans that at the minute is working out for everyone concerned because he's gaining valuable experience.
You said there you can see him getting better. Are you seeing also Luke's experience and sort of little pointers coming off and rubbing off on him during the game and in training?
I think so, and I think the other lads as well. David Long King and Sean Pearson. I think he is open to trying to learn and see what they do. I think the intensity of training is something that I'm saying it not struggle with, but I think we did something last week, for example, and he was like, yeah, that was tough. And again, different clubs or different age groups even can sometimes train differently. That's again managers, coaches' prerogatives. There's certainly many different ways to go about it, but we do feel that we train at an intensity, and that's something again players have to get used to very quickly if they're going to succeed, and thankfully Riley has done.
That must be really good for you to see as a coach, because you want to be challenging the players and making them think about all these different skill sets.
Well, I guess so. Again, that to me is just part of the job, and certainly conversations that I have with players, I always say to them, this is sometimes not the things that they want to hear, but ultimately I'm telling them because I want them to be better. I want them to be better from a selfish point of view, for myself, for our football club, but also there's a big part for them as well. I feel that if they take these things on board, that will only benefit them, in their career and moving forward. And I'm sure they want to be in our team while they are on loan, and players generally, even if they don't quite work out here, I want them to try and be armed, with football skills, with tactical knowledge. Mental strength is a big one, and a work ethic that when they go elsewhere, they'll impress people, because we want them to have careers, whether that's here or elsewhere.
Your clean sheet record's been really good. We touched on Saturday. How much easier is that made by having a settled defence and having a rock solid partnership that you can keep going to?
Yeah, I think it can't do any harm. Again, I think it can sometimes get a little bit too caught up in just, it's partnerships, it's this. Yeah, of course people can, maybe some partnerships work better than others. But I think there's also, if you're organised, if you work hard as a team, which I think the players have done, that all helps to contribute towards clean sheets. It's not just the defenders, it's not just the goalkeeper, you know, it's a team. The defenders have done well in terms of contributing at the other end as well, some of them. So likewise, it's, you know, scoring goals, it's not all about the forward players, and vice versa.
Yeah, and just finally, obviously with Ryan being out, we'd assume, and obviously you were looking at potentially bringing a striker a couple of weeks ago. Has that made any, you know, impressions on your mind potentially about any movement?
Not particularly. I know where I'm at with it in my own head, and what either I'll do or not do. So you know the squad will be what it was for the game tomorrow night, and we'll, you know, constantly assess and inquire, and if something was right, we'll act upon it. But until it is right, then you know, we'll carry on as we are.
That's great. Thank you, Paul.
All right. Cheers, Elliot.